Today we're going to do another roof inspection. You know, for most of us, we work alone. And working alone does have a lot of benefits because I don't have to share any of my inspection fees with anybody else, but I do have some inherent dangers, and roof certainly being one. The standards say we do have to be able to walk flat roofs, especially if they have a permanent means of access, and this is certainly a permanent means of access. But I've got a personal policy, and my personal policy is safety first. And one of the things that I've always done throughout my entire career is before I climb any ladder to go on any roof, first thing I do is I pick up my phone and I'm going to text my emergency contact. In my case, it's my wife. And so let me quickly text her. And I always just text the word climbing. And so as soon as I do that, I'm going to go get up on this roof. When I get up on the roof, I'm going to say on it. And then that way she knows I've made it up on the roof safely. If I didn't make it safely and I didn't do the on it for her, she'll call my phone. If I don't answer, she immediately calls 911 with my position because she does know where I'm at. I've also got a fall sensor on my watch too that'll help. But we always want to think about safety, so let's get up on this roof. So I'm getting up on this roof. Nice, safe roof to get on. We've got a great access point here. And then I'm safely on the roof, so let me give my wife another text. On it. Perfect. So let's get started. When we think about roofs, particularly we think about commercial buildings first, I think about the big three: HVAC, roof, parking lot. So this is a very important inspection for us. So let's take a look at this roof specifically. This particular roof is interesting because the parapet walls give me the inclination it's an EPDM roof. But it's 100% ballasted. And so the wonderful thing for us inspectors is I can't see anything. And so what I'm looking for in ballast is moved ballast, something that's rippled away. That's typically a sign that some wind is blown and we have a leak in the roof. What I'm also going to look for is uniformity and then ponding. So let's walk around and see what we see. As we can see with a ballasted roof, I've got all this wonderful river rock. It's important that we have river rock, whether it's this 1.5 inch or the 3 inch, because it's smooth-sided and not sharp-sided. So this type of rock can roll around on this roof and not puncture it. But what I'm looking at, we had a very heavy rain last night. I don't see where I've gotten mud. I don't see anything in here. I'm pretty confident that this roof drains pretty well. But I'm still gonna take my walk around. And as I walk around, I'm gonna look at the parapet wall as it rolls up. And I'm also gonna look at the coping, which is that cap portion of the parapet. Now, one thing to be mindful of with safety, walking on rock can be dangerous. And so you'll see as we walk around this roof, they got some wonderful concrete stepping stones for us to walk around, especially near some of the mechanical units. But I'm not gonna walk extremely close to the roof because I don't wanna lose my step and go over the edge. So again, I'm always thinking about safety because I do work by myself. So let's check out the coping. So I am walking around this roof very carefully, very gingerly on these river rocks. And I look at the coping, and almost the whole wide pan of this entire roof, I've got sealant at every joint of the coping. So there's obviously been a previous issue. So I'm certainly going to take a picture of that. Make sure that we don't have any cracking that's going through that sealant. And I'm gonna look at the drainage. In this particular case, I'm dealing with a scupper drain. And you can see where on this EPDM, I've got it kind of grayed out. And oh, by the way, if you don't know what's EPDM, one of the easiest ways to note EPDM versus a TPO, give a little scratch with your fingernail. EPDM will always leave kind of a fingernail or a chalking mark, where a TPO will never do that. They make white EPDM, they make black TPO, and it's the easiest way for you to tell. In this particular case, which is pretty wonderful on this roof, there's actually a stamping from the manufacturer that says EPDM. So we can certainly see that. But I am going to take a picture again. I'm going to take a picture of the cracking at the coping, as well as the previous repair that's happened on this scupper hole. And so I think this is a good point to make sure that you define for your clients. Let them know what you saw and anything that is extraordinary that wasn't here during the initial application of this roof, which is this repair and that sealant. One of the surest signs that there has been an issue on a roof is if the ballast has been moved. I don't know how many times I've seen roofs where the repair technician doesn't replace the ballast. In this particular case, around this exhaust hood, I've got a repair mark as well as all this missing ballast. And whether the repair technician didn't have confidence in their repair, or and they're going to come back at some other point, or just laziness. But this is a great opportunity to take a picture of this repair and talk about that for your clients. But what I am excited to talk about is our next thing. When we walk around the roof, we have all kinds of ventilation, and we have rooftop units, we have all these things, but what we have is a beautiful utility set vent. So let's go take a look at that next. This is a very large exhaust fan. They call it a utility set vent. It actually draws the air out from the interior space, goes across this giant squirrel cage fan, driven by the motor that's underneath this housing, and it can move a tremendous amount of volume of air. This is a very large fan. I would find this a lot of times in super large restaurants, hotels, things like that. But in this manufacturing space, they certainly did need to have an exhaust fan this large, and so here it is. There's really not a whole lot to inspect on it, except for it should have access panels. In this case, I do have an access panel right here that can be opened, but we do need to be able to service the unit. And so there's our access panel. If this was part of an exhaust system for a kitchen, then we'd have to have access panels on both sides for cleaning. So we talked about Parapet walls just briefly earlier. I guess should probably define them for those that might not be very familiar with them. A parapet wall is any wall that extends higher than a roof. That roof could be pitched, that roof could be flat, but that's a parapet wall. So I've always said that in castles, this is where you stand behind and look out for your enemy. But in this particular parapet wall here, I've got a nice, I'm 7'8". So this is about 6'10". No, this is about a 5 foot tall parapet wall. And so on one of these roofs like this, when you're looking at it, before you even go do the inspection and you're doing your research, you should try to make sure that you have access to all this, because if you got up on this roof from that wonderful access that we had before and saw this drop down, last thing you want to do is go over this parapet wall and be stuck down here because you can't climb up. So I would have made sure during my research and looking at this building from satellite images that I have this wonderful ladder right here that gives me access to this lower plane of roof. Because in the CommSop, there are two standards. One, we get on roofs that are accessible with a permanent means, and two, any HVAC equipment that's higher than 16 feet off the ground must be accessible by a permanent means. And so this suffices both categories. And so then once again, as I do my inspection, I just want to make sure that this parapet wall is sealed. I see where they have the word caulk here, so they've obviously had an issue that somebody's had to come back and do some repair. I would take a picture of the previous repair. But one thing to be very mindful of on any parapet wall is I typically don't like to walk within the first foot of it. So if this is my wall and this is where I'm walking, because this might be an area down here at the bottom that's not adhered as well. Maybe that's there on purpose to allow a little expansion and contraction, and sometimes there's an air bubble, and if I step on that air bubble, I could rupture the roof. So I like to walk in a little bit, and plus it gives my eye. Part of structure, I'm going to look at plumb, level, square, and straight. So from this vantage point, I can see this coping all the way across this entire roof is wonderfully level. And then I can take a look at the parapet wall sight down it with my eye and see that it's perfectly plumb. And it's straight. There's no bends, there's no warping to it. So I'm feeling pretty confident that the structure of this building is going to be pretty good. So what I want to do is I'm going to continue to walk this roof and check out our drainage. Again, we have this benefit as an inspector of this ballasted roof. And so again, with the ballasted roof, there's not a lot of EPDM we can see, not a lot of roof material. So that's what I'm going to be watching for, are just my penetrations, because I'm just going to be taking pictures of this roof and telling my client, I can't see it. And so it really makes it a little less stressful as an inspector. But nonetheless, it's still something that we obviously need to do. So as we talked with the ballasted roof, this is a great example of an area in the middle of the plane that doesn't have any ballast. So this is a spot that's certainly going to take my interest, and certainly a spot that I want to take a picture of, because this could be an issue of a leak or something going on. I'll try to declinate it, put it to the corner of the building, and then come back and look at it from underneath. But something that certainly needs to be documented. This is a roof video. And for those that tuned in to look at this beautiful EPDM ballasted roof, we're in. But I had to stop for a minute, because as a commercial inspector, we get excited over the dumbest things. What I'm excited is I'm standing next to RTU 5. I know it's RTU 5 because there it says it. And right here in the ballast are 3 cartridge fuses, particularly 3 600 volt cartridge fuses. That's a lot of voltage for one fuse laying here. So it obviously tells me that this RTU had problems with its electrical current, and something happened to it. I don't see burn marks, but I certainly see evidence. I am going to take a picture of that every day and let my clients know. But one other thing that I want to talk about, as long as we're just talking about this briefly, statistically, an RTU comes up to term, or should be typically budgeted for replacement, between 20 and 25 years. And this unit is about a 35-year unit, so it's certainly well past its useful life. So that would be something that if you're doing your HVAC inspection, you're going to note. But even if I got called, let's say I got called by a client and this is a roof-only inspection, I think it's good form and excellent client retention to note those fuses, just even as a glancing conversation, because I think whoever owns this building needs to know that they probably are having troubles or ongoing troubles with this unit. We've taken our walk around this entire roof. It's about a 45 to 50,000 square foot building. This roof took me about 45 minutes to walk thoroughly. So it's a hot day. If I was up here any longer, I'd probably want to bring a bottle of water with me strapped to my back. I've got a lot of rooftop units, a lot of HVAC that I would deal with, because I do them all at the same time. I try to limit how many times I go up and down a ladder. And so I would have probably done that. Doing all the HVAC that's up here, this is probably about 2 hours for me to finish up all of this 45 to 50,000 square foot building. But before I go down this ladder, I got to pull out my phone again and text my wife. So let me do that. And what do you think I'm going to say? Climbing. There. So it's all sent. I'm going to go down. I'll see you guys on the ground. Well, we made it to the ground slowly, mind you, not by the speed of gravity. And let me text my wife real quick. On the ground. Send. Perfect. So at this point, there's a lot of things you can do. Now, if your client was at the inspection, this would be the time that I'd probably summarize the roof. They're not here. I'm all by myself, but I'm going to summarize for you. We saw an EPDM roof. Pretty statistical, but almost 100% ballast. That ballast does impede our view. So that will be a comment on the report. We have some areas where the ballast has been moved. Some of those movement points were for repairs, and some of those movement points I don't have a reason for, but certainly documented. All of our coping has been sealed. That sealant is not complementary, where it's the same color, so it's very apparent that it is a repair. We've got a lot of other penetrations that have been sealed as well. And so with that, I think the roof is from the surface point is extremely satisfactory. But the next point will be walking around inside. Hopefully we'll have that on the next video. But until then, this is the inspection of a ballasted EPDM roof.